We live in a world where social media, family, work, even everyday life can leave us feeling filtered. But when the mics turn on, the unfiltered truth comes alive. We share stories, real struggles, and real laughs as three friends navigating life's messy but beautiful moments together, one conversation at a time. Hi, welcome to the chat, Life Unfiltered. Tonight we're honored to sit down with a truly remarkable guest, Michael Edley, an evidential psychic medium whose work bridges the seen and unseen. Michael brings comfort and clarity to those seeking connection with their past loved ones, offering heartfelt evidences that love truly transcends the physical world. With deep compassion and an open heart, he holds hope for every soul eager to bridge between worlds, helping people experience healing, affirmation, and peace through his gifts. But Michael isn't just guided by spirit, he's guided by artistic expression too. In 2024, he released his inspirational album, The Divine Journey of a Mystical Soul, blending music with spiritual insight in a way that touches the heart and elevates the spirit. So sit back, open your heart, and join us as we explore Michael's journey, his mission, and the beautiful intersections of spirit, music, and meaning. Good evening, everyone. Michael, welcome to the show. We're so excited to have you.
Thank you so much. Pleasure to be here tonight with you, Grace.
It truly feels like divine alignment to me. I'm so excited. So I want to start. I want to start at the beginning. Yeah, I want to start at the beginning, like we always do, and like you always start with your first question when I watch you interview your guests. I was reading on your website how you said your first connection with spirit was at the age of 3. You tell us a little more about that, and how did you recognize what that experience was at such a young age?
Yes, I don't know if I truly recognized what it was and what was going on, but so my family, if anyone's familiar with the Jersey Shore here, so I live along the Jersey Shore. My family grew up in, they were near the Old Bridge, Saraville area. So we were in that area, and their first house, railroad tracks behind us. And it was an older house, and it had the old steel doors. So as a kid, I would explore. I don't even know what I was doing, roaming and wandering around my house at that age, but I remember the steel doors were open, and I just went down into my basement. And down there, I saw a guy hanging out, and started talking to him. And for me, it was just as I'm seeing you. And I don't remember exactly what occurred in the conversation, but I remember going upstairs and telling my mom I talked to the man in the basement. And I just remember her freaking out, grabbing my hand and walking me back down there and be like, who did you talk to? Who was down here? And one thing led to another. My parents had researched, what was going on in the area. And on the train tracks behind our house, a guy was killed. And that's probably whose energy I was picking up on. He was killed right on our property in the yard. And that was the first time I remember actually connecting to a spiritual being.
Interesting.
But I had an interesting upbringing, an interesting family, because they were open to it. They were, it was an interesting blend of spirituality and religion. Half my family, they were Hungarian gypsies. Literally, my grandparents were off the boat. Christmas time, my grandmother would read palms, and she would read tea leaves. She was very big into the ancient prophetical aspects of religion. They were Protestant, and she was very open to like the Old Testament and the mystical aspects of that. But then the other side of my family was very devout Catholic. And my grandmother, she was what they call a charismatic Catholic. She was very big into the saints and to the angels. If she lost anything, it was, dear St. Anthony, something lost. And sure enough, it would show up. And I remember a very specific instance where she was supposed to be taking me out to eat, and she couldn't find her car keys. And I remember looking all over her kitchen and on her kitchen table, and there were no car keys there. And she's like, Michael, we're going to pray. We're going to pray to St. Anthony, and my car keys are going to show up. And I'm thinking, okay, Grandma, sure. I hope they do, because I'm hungry. We prayed. We walked back into the kitchen, and lo and behold, there are her car keys sitting on the table. that I just searched high and low, every spot on that table, and there were no car keys there.
Yeah.
And that was one of my first realizations that, wow, okay, there's something interesting to this. And we can pray to the angels and the saints as intercessors, and they'll help us find things.
Yes, absolutely. We've had many
Not knowing
experiences
the
like that,
full,
right, Gina?
the full gambit of all of it, but that was probably my first experience of the mystical aspects of the Catholic religion. So it was an interesting upbringing, and I had a blend of spirituality and religion.
Yeah.
I experienced spirit very young age, like you had said, 3 years old, in my parents' first house, in that basement. There were different times too where we were having a birthday party. I think I was probably 4.5, 5 years. I was probably around 5 years old. I don't remember the exact age, but it was about that time. And I was speaking to one of my aunts who was in spirit, and she had passed probably 8 to 10 years prior to me being born. I didn't know that. I was talking to her just as I'm talking to you.
Oh, wow.
And I started telling my mom who I was talking to. And I just remember my mom, Michael, who were you talking to? And, well, I brought, up a name and what she was telling me. And my mom, she was a little shocked. And I remember her later telling me, she passed away before you were born. And my mom went to psychics and different things, and she was open to it. So they didn't institutionalize me.
Yeah.
They didn't
I was going to say that because you said your grandmother read palms. So
on the one side, yeah.
Okay.
On my father's side,
they were believing that. Yeah.
Yeah. So how my Christmas holiday would go, it was with one set of grandparents, and my grandmother's reading my palm and telling me things she sees around me, and then my other one, we're praying to the saints and the angels, and going through Our Father and the Rosary, and it was a very interesting blend. But no one discouraged me being open to the other side of the family, or what the other side of the family was discussing. So they didn't institutionalize me. They didn't tell me I was crazy. They entertained it, and then it became a fun thing of, well, okay, Michael, what's happening with this, or what do you see around this?
They started asking you questions. That's pretty funny.
There was another time where my uncle went to New Mexico right before Christmas, and I started telling my mom what he was going to bring me back for Christmas. And I'm like, Mom, he's bringing me back 2 marionettes. And I described them. And I remember her telling me, are you crazy? Why do you think he's bringing you those back? And I'm like, I don't know. I know, and I see in my mind that that's what he's getting me, and that's what he's going to bring me back. And this goes back way before the internet, way before cell phones. This is the old dial-up rotary phone. So there wasn't communication of, I overheard a conversation, or I saw a message or an email. It was way before that. And lo and behold, here he comes to my house and shows up. I unboxed the 2 marionettes.
Oh, wow.
And I think that was the point where my mom, it was like, wow, there's definitely something to this. Something's going on with my kid. I don't really know what.
And how old were you at that time?
That was early on. I was probably about 7 when that happened. Yeah. So I was really young, and, they entertained it, and I'm blessed that they did, because that's one of the things we have to understand. As children, we're very tuned into the spiritual realm. We're very open to our intuition. We're very connected. As we get older, I think society kind of dilutes that out of us. We get conditioned, and we don't want people to think we're crazy, or something weird's going on. But what I always tell people is, if your children are connecting, or they're talking about these things, go a little deeper and see and discuss it with them, because I feel that divine presence is where the most creative things come from, whether that's art, whether that's music, whether that's designing structures, anything.
The creativity.
Any type of creativity. I believe it's created twice. Once in our mind, where it's divinely inspired, and then again, a second time in this physical existence.
Yes, it's so true.
And if you think about all ancient works of art and music, sculptures, buildings, some of the most beautiful, divinely inspired things came from the beyond.
Yes.
And if you look at Bach or Mozart, or any great artist, think about the Mona Lisa, think about all these,
it's true, where was it
great pieces of art, of music. They all talk about divine inspiration flowing through them, and it was something from beyond their capabilities. They just saw it or they heard it, and then they created it.
So because you
So,
were so young and
Right.
it just like naturally evolved for you, was there ever a time in your life where you said, I don't want this, and you resisted this calling you were giving?
most of my life.
Okay. Okay.
Most of my life. Yeah, I would say so. My journey, it shifted a little bit at 8 years old. I had a near-death experience. So I had the parents that were pushing me into everything. You know, I was in gymnastics, I was in Boy Scouts, I was cross country, you know, so they wanted me involved in all different stuff. Well, in gymnastics, I was in a competition and I was on the balance beam. And as I was coming off the balance beam and I landed on the platform wasn't built correctly and it collapsed. And I went back and I split my head open.
Oh my God.
And I just remember going dizzy, touching my face and just feeling like someone dumped a can of tomato juice over my head, or, you know,
Oh my
tomato
God.
soup. And I remember just being covered in red. And in that moment, my coach she threw a towel or a blanket or something over my head. And I remember her blacking out. And then I lost consciousness.
Okay.
The interesting thing is, from the moment that I guess they were putting me into the ambulance and taking me to the hospital, I had this divine moment where I still don't truly know what I connected to, whether it was my guardian angel or whether it was the divine presence of God. But I can tell you the stereotypical, I was engulfed in this orb of white and gold light. And I just heard this angelic kind of androgynous voice. I don't know if it was male. I don't know if it was female. And it almost imprinted in my mind. It was like I was telepathically hearing, "You'll be okay. It's not your time."
Okay.
And then I woke up on the operating table and I just remember the surgeon screaming at me and pushing me down. "If you don't sit still, I'm going to have to strap you down."
Oh no.
Yeah, but you're a little kid. You're terrified.
And then I
Oh, my
blacked
God.
out again because I guess I was jumping around, or I guess I came out of it and I was moving and they were trying to stitch me up and making sure I wasn't going to bleed out.
Wow.
And yeah, I came probably within several minutes of dying. You know, I lost that much blood. I'm very fortunate.
Yeah.
You know, I praise my guides and the angelic presence and all that was divinely guarding and watching over me, that I'm still here. But I can tell you that completely shifted my understanding of, you know, even though I was having medium type experiences and I was experiencing psychic phenomena, it was still kind of I don't know. It was almost like this
8.
entertaining.
How much could you understand? You were only 8
yeah.
years
I was
old,
really young. Yeah. So I knew something was going on, but at that point in time, I had a realization that we're much more than this physical body. There's much more beyond this physical existence, and everything that my grandmothers had taught, everything my nan and my bam talked about. There was something to it. There was something to the angels and the saints and Jesus and God, and there was something to the other end of our spiritual guides and the divine presence within, and it all started making sense. So that's when I really started tuning, like I started meditating in my own way. I would take myself through relaxing my body and I would try to have outer body experiences. And at that time, I didn't know what remote viewing was. And I really didn't even know what outer body experiences were, but I started having them and I started having lucid dreams. And what happened was I started seeing art. When I was really young, I drew a lot. Art was kind of my focal point. It was my meditation. And it was something that when I was in that moment of creativity, things would come to me, and I would start to connect to that divine presence. I would start to see images that I would draw. I was very big into like science fiction, sci-fi and all that stuff. And I would see weird stuff and I would see like fantasy type stuff, dragons and medieval knights and I would draw all this stuff. And I was just kind of divinely inspired. And then I would start to see landscapes. And it was interesting because in certain moments of being inspired, I would draw areas that my family went to when my mom was pregnant with me. So and she was like, "That's interesting. That looks like your aunt's home up on the lake in the Poconos. That looks like," and I don't know where this was coming from, but it was coming from beyond me. And at that point, I lost my one grandmother. She had gotten very sick and she had passed away. and I couldn't bring myself to go to her funeral. I mean, I was very close to her. It was one of the first major losses in my life. And it really, it really broke me down, and it was really hard. And I couldn't bring myself to go to her funeral. And I remember sitting home by myself, and my parents were at the funeral. And I just remember crying profusely. And I remember telling her, I'm so sorry I couldn't go to your funeral. I'm so sorry I couldn't go to your funeral. And all of a sudden, I started hearing her voice. And then all of a sudden, I started seeing her. And then all of a sudden, she actually manifested in front of me.
Wow.
And
that's amazing.
And that was when I was like, wow, I felt just so connected to her and so much peace. And she told me, that's okay, Michael, because you didn't need to be there to send me on my way. We're still connected. I'm still here with you. And so much peace and tranquility came from that she was like an ongoing guide for me. She definitely became one of my spiritual guides. And I kept conversing with her, and I kept talking to her. And as I started talking to her, it just kind of opened up that portal. It opened up that pathway. And then it started, getting a little crazy, because in my meditations, I started connecting to angels, and I started connecting to other guides. And then I had an outer body experience, and it freaked me out a little bit. I literally lifted from my body, and I remember looking back and seeing that golden cord, and I was literally above my house and could see my development. And the crazy thing was, I could see 2 houses over, and I could see what was in their backyard. And I hadn't seen in their backyard prior to that. And it kind of freaked me out. And literally when I think it startled me, I immediately was pulled back into my body. And the following day, I had to sneak into my neighbor's backyard and see if I really saw. I really had to see if I saw it was a balloon for their pool. It was a special chair they had out there. And sure enough, it was all there.
And why do you think at that time is when you had the out of body experience? Because you were working on meditating, or was there something going on in your life that?
I think it was everything combined.
Okay.
I think it was everything combined. And I think I was very creative. I think I was not overthinking it. I just I wasn't thinking. Yeah, I wasn't. It was, they say, let go and let God. I wasn't overthinking it. I wasn't letting the analytical mind take over and say, oh, this isn't really happening. I was just experiencing it.
Yeah.
And in that experience of letting go, that intuitive psychic flow just started happening.
Yeah.
And then it freaked me out when I went to my neighbor's yard. Honestly, that's one of the first times where I thought, wow, what if I have an outer body experience and I don't come back into my body? Right. And that's when the analytical mind started taking over, and I started worrying, and I started having a fear creep in around it. And that was probably the beginning of me trying to push it down and trying to, I talk about it. I talk about my mediumship now as being a volume knob. I can turn it all the way down or turn it all the way up. Okay. Well, at that point in time, I was trying to turn it down and push it away.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
You said most of your life you're trying to resist it. I want to go back to the experience you said you had with your grandmother, how much comfort that brought you, seeing her after she passed and knowing that you were connected. I feel like that's what you bring to all of us in our times of grief and loss. You bring that comfort. It's so therapeutic. And is that the reason why that you decided to maybe go forward with that, because of that experience with your grandmother, or it just naturally evolved?
Yeah,
that you do.
That was probably one of the most crucial events that happened in my life that showed me, death is not the reality of what we're experiencing in this physical existence. The body and the soul transcend the body. There's something more. And I had proof. I had my own experience. It wasn't like I was reading a story or someone told me this happened. I 100% had this experience without a shadow of a doubt. And I knew at that point in time, there is absolutely something beyond this physical reality. And that experience that I had, there were many times when I was very conflicted of, is this my path? Is this what my soul's calling me to do? And I fought it. I fought it for a long time.
Sure.
And it was moments
big
like
responsibility.
That. Yeah, well, it was moments like that I thought, you know what? it's ignorant of me, or it's being kind of self-consumed with my own worry, my own doubt, my own fears,
Mm.
when I could be helping somebody.
Right.
I could be of service. I
Yes.
could,
Yes.
trying to help someone else. And, it's part of the process that brought me full circle.
Yeah. And there's humility in that, what you were going through. That's beautiful because,
Well,
like you said, for you, it could have been frightening that you needed to push it away. But for others, you realize the gift that you could bring to the world. And you do. You absolutely do.
well,
Mm-hmm.
I
I can
think
attest to that.
that's when we're on this journey of understanding how our intuitive abilities build into our psychic abilities, and then that's the basis of our mediumship. It's pushing the ego and the analytical mind
Yes.
aside. We
Yes.
so much of that gets in the way, and I think that's why children are so connected.
Mm-hmm.
They're not caught up in that
No,
analytical mind. They're still
no.
very creative. They're very free flowing, and they're very open and tuned in. And we lose as we grow up. Society conditions us out of it, and that fear of what are other people gonna think. And
Right.
Mhm.
it was a long process for me. And but what I can tell you is, in that process, even though I was pushing it down and I didn't want other people to know I was having these experiences, I absolutely utilized my intuitive abilities and all my psychic abilities to help me navigate everyday life, whether
Everything
that was
else. Yeah.
relationships, whether that was building the company I built,
Mm-hmm.
all of that. I never would have had the degrees of success that I had if I didn't tune into my psychic abilities and let them guide me. So
Mm.
they were always with me,
Yeah.
but the problem was, early on, they were very self-serving.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It was, how can I benefit? What can I get out of this? And I wasn't looking at it from the right mindset.
Mm.
It wasn't until it shifted and I saw, okay, this is very self-serving. I'm coming from more of an egotistical aspect of this.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like the negative aspect of it. How can I shift this, and how can I help others with this? And
Yeah, that's what I wanted to ask you. When you give someone a piece of information like evident about their loved one, and you see the change in them, you're changing someone's life. Like, how does that land for you? What does that feel like?
yeah, it inspires me to do it even
Mm.
more. It
Yep.
really
Yeah.
does. And like, I have to understand that I'm just the conduit,
Mm-hmm.
and it's truly a three-way connection. It's my energy, it's the sitter's energy, and it's our loved ones in spirit, our collective, our guides, our angelic presence, our loved ones.
Yep.
And I just have to be open and tuned into that information. And it's think of an electrical outlet. You
Yeah.
can't see it, but it flows through, and you can feel it and sense it. And if you stick your finger in that outlet, you're going to get a shock. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
we're a conduit, and we're just allowing that information to flow through us. And an easy way to explain it is, it's basically my energy connecting to the sitter's energy. We're grounding and raising our vibration, and then our loved ones in spirit are lowering their vibration. And I'm reading that language of energy, frequency, and vibration.
Mm.
So it's names, it's symbols, it's letters, it's imprinting knowledge that I wouldn't have otherwise, of experiences you had with your son, your daughter, your mother, your father, your siblings, your friends. And I've come to understand that it's something we can all learn. It's something that is inherently within all of us. I say it's our God-given divine ability.
Mm-hmm.
It's our God-given right to connect and have this healing flow through us. Just most people are conditioned out of it, or we think there's something wrong with it, or it's negative, or it's evil. And it's funny. So Gina, I'll honor your Catholic tradition and Ash Wednesday.
Yeah.
Love that. But it's funny because I have to say, the church, the organized church, harnessing religion and the everything that happened in 300 to 400 AD with Constantine and taking over the Roman Empire, kind of harnessing and controlling the church. I think there was a process of taking the control from the people. And now the church and the priest had to be the intercessor. And what was our God-given natural, mystical, supernatural abilities prior to that were taken away, harnessed, and controlled. And what I love to talk about is how a lot of organized religion is getting back to that, especially the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church is absolutely getting back into the mystical aspects of Jesus, the supernatural aspects of that. It's all within the Old Testament, the New Testament. If we look at ancient, Kabbalah, mystical Judaism, it's all in there. If we look at different religions, there's a lot of connecting dots. And
Absolutely.
I truly believe, like what I refer to as God, this ominous, omnipotent, powerful source. And I do believe we all come from that.
Yeah, I do too.
I think we may all have a different name from it, but I think that omnipresent, powerful force, which I refer to as God, transcends all energy, frequency, and vibration, and is the basis of everything we see within this physical reality and everything that transcends beyond into the spiritual realms and into the different dimensions around us.
Yeah, I agree. Can you explain to us, I'm going to say, and our listeners, but to me as well, because what is the difference between evidential medium and then and other mediumships? Because I know that's your title. You're an evidential medium. So
why I do this is because I can bring through names, dates, pieces of critical information.
Evidence,
evidence and validate information that there is no way of me knowing.
Okay.
To 100% validate the existence of the soul beyond the body. So I want to bring through names, dates, pieces of critical information that there will be no way of me knowing, instilling something that you were just doing yesterday or the day before that your loved one was with you and saw you doing. And so in today's day and age, I think everywhere you look, there's some aspect of spirituality, medium, psychic, card reader, someone that's doing channeling. There's so many different modalities to this. And not that that's bad, but I think a lot of it, if you can only bring through general information, not that that doesn't have healing.
Right.
And I can say, yes, we need to awaken. We need to transcend. We need to grow and learn. We need, that's a lot of generalized.
Right. And we all know that.
Big information. You can all do that. And so with me as an evidential medium, I want to bring through unconditional proof that your loved one is around you and something that there is no way of me knowing. And there's times where I'll bring information through that the sitter doesn't even know about, and they'll have to ask one of the family members or a friend, and then it's validated, and I'll get an email, Mike, this is crazy, but I didn't even know what you told me in the reading, and I'm validating it for you right now because it was 100% on.
Yeah.
And, that happens. And sometimes we get psychic amnesia. We're in a reading and, the energy is flowing, and sometimes we can get a little flustered or overwhelmed. And especially if you're dealing with heavy grief, sometimes that can, it can block out some of the energy, or it can cause us to not be very present in the moment because we're dealing with that and we're not picking up on some of the information, or, we forget about it. And then later so that's why anyone that's with me, I try writing it down, but I also like the person to record it. If you want to record it, absolutely, because I'm going into a trance and I'm going to remember bits and pieces, but literally an hour out of that trance, I won't remember critical details. So that's why I tell people, if you're in a reading with me and you have questions, well, wait till the end. I want to bring all the information through, but if you have questions, ask them before I'm out of that energetic trance that's connecting to you and your collective, because I won't remember a lot of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, is that all connected to the research that you do? Because I know you do scientific research as well.
Yeah. So part of the process of me doing this, I'm even though I was having these experiences, I'm a very skeptical person, and I'm a very scientific based person. So I knew I was having these experiences, but I had to prove to myself, this is really going on. There's something really happening with you. So early on, I started going into the city, and I started just, I was like, okay, I have to do readings. I have to go into like the worst environment and atmosphere where I won't know anyone, I won't know anything, and see if I can pull through information. And sure enough, it was happening. And you have to understand, I was a business owner. My wife and I had a company for a long time. And so in doing that, I was on different chambers of commerce, governor's advisory board. I was in all these different business communities, and I couldn't let people know I was a medium because the fear of, what are people going to think? Are people going to think this guy's crazy? Is this guy talking to demons? Like, what's going on in his head?
Yes.
And I was very fearful of what other people thought. What in full circle, now I know the people that were meant to be aligned with me, the people I'm meant to be connected to, won't care about that. They're going to
Right.
be open and they're going to be understanding to me, who I am, and what I'm doing. But it was a long process to get there. So I would go into the city, and one of my first instances in the city, I had a lady sitting with me, and I started bringing through such crazy information for her, and then I knew nothing about her. Most people sitting with me, I don't even know their name.
Mhm.
And I started bringing through information in regard to her husband. Well, lo and behold, her husband was an NYPD detective, and he was working on a cold case. Well, this lady is like, Mike, are you going to be here all day? Because I have someone that they need to talk to you. And sure, yeah, I'm here till 5 o'clock. I'm at this event, this wellness fair, and I'll be here. And I probably have some openings at the end of the day. I'd be happy to have your friend sit in. Well, lo and behold, it was her husband, and I started bringing through pieces of information from a cold case he was working on.
Wow.
Oh.
And he immediately sits down, and I can sense when someone's very skeptical or someone's
Mhm.
very closed off. You feel that energy.
Yeah.
And I knew, okay, something's up with this guy. And he opens a folder, and there's a non-disclosure agreement. And he said, Mike, you sat with my wife earlier. I'm an NYPD detective. I don't believe in any of this, but the information you brought through, I feel like it could be in regard to a cold case I'm working on. You didn't know her name. You didn't know anything about her. You don't know anything about me. Are you willing to sign this non-disclosure?
That's crazy.
And I want to show you a couple pictures and tell me what you see around this. And he's like, this is the information you already brought through for my wife.
Mm.
And I was like, sure, that's fine.
Mhm.
You paid
Oh
for
my
your,
God.
you paid for your hour session, whatever you want in this hour session. And I can't guarantee I'm going to connect. And, I didn't know what was going on with this. And I brought through some other pieces of information. I signed his non-disclosure agreement, and, he got my information. I got his. He told me, you can't talk to anyone about this. I'm not telling
Wow.
anyone I'm working with a medium, but I want you to pull information around. I'm going to email you certain things around this. And will you tell me what you get? And yeah, no problem. And it was, no money. I wasn't expecting any kind of
Oh.
payment. I just felt okay. And in my mind, I'm thinking, wow, I'm asking spirit to validate that I'm meant to do this. And here I am getting pulled onto an NYPD cold case.
Cold
The first
case.
first day
Wow.
I'm in the
That's
first
so
time I'm in the
interesting.
city doing readings. Well, I can't say that I solved the case, but I can tell you I gave him crucial information that led him to a location
Mm.
that found remnants of her clothing that eventually did it led him to the body.
Wow.
So I'd like to
Ooh, I
say,
got chills.
Yes. Yeah. That's
I
pretty
was able
amazing.
to imprint energy and say, and I talk about that now because we're seeing a lot of that now about
Yes.
people talking
Mhm.
about
Yeah.
Mhm.
detectives working with psychics, or,
Yes.
people pulling, mediums into cold cases. There's absolutely something to it, and we can absolutely connect to that energy. But
Yeah.
I think you have to come from a true place of wanting to be the light and the love and try to find that connection and healing for the family versus trying to get famous or make money off
Yeah.
of it.
Yeah.
I think if you come at it from that energy, it could almost potentially block those connections because you're
Okay.
coming to it from an ego standpoint.
Yes, absolutely. But
So
did I read that you were doing like research with Yale? I mean, actually
yeah.
scientific research?
So that's
Yeah.
later on.
Oh, okay.
That
Wow.
comes a little bit later on. So in this process of
Mhm.
skeptical Mike, the psychic medium, trying to prove to myself that this is real, that was the first instance that I really saw, okay, I can do good with this. I can
Yeah, it was a pretty big
possibly
validation.
help. I can
Yeah.
potentially help others. And it made me feel good that I was able to bring information through that gave a family potentially closure that they may not have had, wondering what had happened to their daughter.
Wow.
And it was like doing it with no strings attached, not having any expectation around it. It truly was something that like inspired me to want to do this more and want to help others.
Mm.
And lo and behold, that 8 years later, after that occurred, it was, that was when I started my journey, but it led me to working with the else. So the pandemic hit, and I'm going to be bouncing around. Mike has ADHD right now, and
That's okay.
but there's a lot of small facets to this story. So
Okay.
on this journey, my wife and I, we had built a company, a very large company, and it was successful. And I could tell you, tuning into my psychic abilities and her intuitive abilities are what made it successful. But in doing that, we had built this machine that was basically consuming us. And what had happened was the pandemic hit. And my wife was, she's a cancer survivor, and God bless her soul, 22 years cancer free, where they had given her roughly 90 days to live when her original diagnosis. I can tell you, I talk about this because psychically we tuned in to healing modalities, to looking into, healing sound frequencies, looking into, organic foods. We were intuitively led down a path that I absolutely know was part of her healing process. And if we didn't do that, I don't know if she would be here today. So that's why I tell people, you don't need to tap into your psychic abilities to be on a stage or do a mediumship gallery or, want to do that type of thing. You can utilize it in your own life for relationships, for negotiations, for building companies, for just making sure you're tuning into the energy of a situation so your highest and best possibility can manifest from that.
Oh, hallelujah. Amen to that.
That's why I'm so adamant about people understanding and utilizing their psychic energy, their psychic abilities, because it's so crucial. Once you start tapping into it, your life will never be the same. I know we have moms here with mom's energy and mom's knowing. You have that intuitive guidance around your kids. You have that knowing, that gut instinct. Well, you take that and you tenfold it,
So true.
And it will just lead you down such a divine path that you absolutely will tell yourself, I'm supposed to be making that right-hand turn, but my intuitive energy and my gut is telling me, don't go that way, go right.
Yeah.
Or whatever it's going to be.
You got to just trust it and listen to it. Yeah.
Don't date that person. Don't hire that person. Don't date that person. It's always, I tell you, it's always for your highest, best, and good. Because from my own experience, when I would listen, it put me in the right place at the right time. When I didn't listen, it's 3 steps back to take 2 steps forward. What kind of mess am I going to now have to navigate? And
why do you think sometimes we don't listen? Why do you think we don't listen?
Free will.
Yeah, free will. I think, the analytical mind gets in the way. If you want to think that was a coincidence, or, I'm worrying, or maybe that's an anxiety panic attack that I'm having over that or that person, or no. And we disregard it. And that's the worst thing you could do.
Yes.
So now getting back to the Yale scientific research. So on this journey, when in 2020, when everything started unfolding and unraveling, I mean, we're very fortunate that we were considered an essential business. So we were still open, but we were seeing such chaos and such things unfolding in society that my wife, she went to me, Mike, I'm kind of done. I'm done with the business and what we're doing. And I think I'm ready for a new path. I'm ready for a new journey. I'll support you if you want to do it. And I'll take a backseat to it, and I'll help with paperwork, the office stuff, the ordering, the, managing certain aspects of it. But she's like, I don't want to be in the day-to-day operations anymore. And I have to be honest with you. And I have to let you know that my heart's not there anymore to do the business. And it's interesting because I was thinking to myself, I'm being so consumed and I'm being so drawn into my mediumship. And here I am, doing medium galleries and events outside of my own town. And, I would go into the city and North Jersey, South Jersey, different areas. And I would, and I met great mentors. And, here I am studying up in Lilydale, New York, spiritualist colony, and some great mediums up there. And I was in this, like a catch-22, where I literally didn't know how I was going to allow my mediumship abilities to unfold while I was still being consumed in the day-to-day operations of this business. And I can tell you, my wife telling me that, it almost opened my eyes to, you know what, it's time. It's time for us to we're gonna sell everything. We're just gonna, we're gonna
Time to
jump
do
ship.
this.
What
Yep.
do they
Oh,
say?
no.
The Vikings would burn the ships, burn the bridges, let them go. And I had to meditate on it for, several months. Like
I
through
would
the
think.
whole
Yeah.
pandemic, here I am kind of navigating both realms. And in doing this, I started up in the process of probably 2013, 2014, I started up a spiritual center in addition to my other retail businesses that I had.
Oh,
So
yes, I
just to
did read
share,
that. Hmm.
I was involved in the pet industry. We had holistic natural retail pet stores. We had two retail stores. We had two licensed rescue and shelters.
Oh,
And I was
nice.
also the partner in a holistic natural dog and cat food business.
Mm-hmm.
So it was this machine that we had built. And we were intuitively guided to do that. And it served us well. And it was interesting because it led me to having commercial property. And in one commercial property, we had rental units, and we ended up clearing them out. And I opened a spiritual center. So I couldn't be the face of it. I couldn't be the medium, but I could bring in wellness practitioners. I could bring in healers. I could bring in, people that did meditation, and I could facilitate it. I was the director, but people still didn't truly know that I was a medium other than those that were close to me and some of the other practitioners. So there was this whole machine that was happening, and I was experiencing it day in, day out. I had some of the greatest practitioners coming in, working, and I was so called to do this, but I was afraid to let everyone know that this is who I was. This is what I was doing.
Yeah.
So I was the director of the center, but people didn't know me as, Mike the medium. So lo and behold, when I was in this process of letting go of the business, trying to find my way, seeing where things were going to unfold, as I'm sitting with my accountant and him telling me, is this the craziest thing you're thinking of? What are you doing? You have a 21-year business that you've put your heart and soul into, and you're going to just sell everything. You're going to let everything you've built go. And I remember telling him, yeah, I am.
Wow.
I have to.
That's
because
faith for you.
it's consuming me. And that's why I tell people, if your soul's calling you for something, it's going to keep calling you, and it is going to keep pulling you into that until you listen. Whether that's that creative art, whether that's writing that song, whether that's that relationship, that you're being drawn into or letting go, whether it's, building that business, whatever it may be. If your soul's calling you into that, it's going to keep calling you till you listen.
Absolutely.
So now, me being who I am and the Catholic aspect of me creeping up and going, I don't want people to think this is demonic. I don't want people to think this is evil. It's not. This is truly divine. This is truly, this is truly something mystical. This is truly something that God, instills and embodies us in this physical realm to do and to connect to, and I was so conflicted that I had to ask some of my mentors and some people that were connected. It's funny. One of my biggest mentors, well, actually two of my biggest mentors, one of was a Catholic nun, and she left.
Okay.
Oh,
She
interesting.
left the
I was going
convent.
to ask you that. I was like,
Yeah.
Okay.
It's funny. Yeah. Janet Nohavik, God rest her soul. She's in spirit now. She's a phenomenal guide for many people. She had a facility up in North Jersey called The Journey Within. And I was led there. And that's what I say, when you're called to do something, your guides and spirit will align you, and they'll show you the way. When the student is ready, the teachers will appear. And her and one of my other good friends, Reverend Joe Shield, they were two very integral parts of this journey for me. And they were both involved in the Catholic Church. And they both had to leave the Catholic Church because of their mediumship abilities. They were basically kicked out of the church.
Really?
And very, very, very interesting that I was led and guided to them with my devout Catholic upbringing, and I was able to have some really in-depth conversations with them. And, and doing the spiritual center, I was very fortunate that I was able to align with Joe, and he was able to come down and work out of my center. So here I had some of the greatest teachers, some of the greatest psychics, healers, channelers working in my facility that I'm able to watch and learn from and understand, how this stuff is being facilitated and how we're learning and growing and experiencing this. And I never realized until that point that the God-given abilities that we have as children and we grew up with, we can learn and develop them. We can turn this into a language of energy. We can start to communicate with the spirit realm.
Mm-hmm.
We can develop a language with our loved ones, with our guides, and they can direct us and show us things to guide us in this physical existence in the most best uplifting possible way we can. And that was where, I said, okay, I know I have to do this. This is part of my journey. I was letting go of my business. And through some of my connections, I had the opportunity to go be studied.
Yeah, that's what I'm curious about.
Because I was bringing through my readings, were very evidential. I was bringing through lots of names, lots of numbers, dates, crucial pieces of information that there was no way of me knowing. But now I said, okay, people are going to think I'm crazy. People are going to say, is this guy nuts? Is this guy schizophrenic? Is he talking to demon? Like, what's going on here?
Going on?
So I had to look at this and approach this from a scientific way that, okay, I could be studied. My mediumship can be tested rigorously, and it can be validated that there is something really going on with this guy. There's something really occurring in his mind. So if you go to my website or you go to my Eye of the Spirits with Michael Edley Facebook page, you'll see pictures of me in the Yale lab, hooked up to the EEG,
that's what I saw.
in the MRI
tubes,
being tested in sensory deprivation chambers.
Yeah.
So they literally pushed my clear senses, my psychic abilities to the extreme. Mm-hmm. And they want to see like what was going on in your mind versus someone that potentially could be schizophrenic.
Like they're actually looking at brain waves as you're talking.
So I was hooked up to all kinds of crazy machines, computers to analyze my brain waves, to see what was going on with my pulse, with my heart rate, what was happening internally in my body. I did multiple scans. It's an ongoing process. So I'm still working with them. Yeah. So anytime I'm back up in Connecticut and I try to document parts and pieces of it. Some of it I can't disclose and I can't talk about, but what I can, I like to share, because I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt, 100%, life after death has been proven in the lab. Mm-hmm. Why it's not in mainstream media, why they're not talking about it. There's a lot of reasons, but I can tell you it's becoming more ingrained in the medical system. Mm-hmm. It's becoming more prevalent in psychology, in psychiatry. They're starting to see, okay, there's something here to this energy woo-woo stuff that these psychics and mediums and mystics have been talking about for centuries.
Yes, bridging the gap, finally, yes.
Yeah, we're going to analyze it, we're going to study it, and we're going to see. So that was part of my process. I had to be valid. I wanted to validate in a lab scientifically that I truly possess psychic abilities and these intuitive abilities and aspects of mediumship that are unexplainable but can show up on a scan. These brainwaves can show up. So that was part of the process. And then it was rigorous, and it was something that I was tested for a long period of time, and the evidence was there. It was validated that there is something going on in this guy's mind. Yeah. He's connecting to these otherworldly realms that we don't really understand, but here we are seeing it on the scan. He's bringing through evidence and validation of pieces of knowledge that there's no way of him knowing. And that was the part of it, so that was what I needed to do to validate for myself that I'm going to let everything go. And this is my new journey.
So where do you see all this, like this interjection of all this happening, science, spirituality, like over the next decade? Like, what do you feel is going to come out of all of this?
I think an awakening is already happening. And I think we're going to look at science and spirituality as this unified, cohesive element that isn't separate. It truly should be blended, and we should look at it as such, because that's truly what it is. It's just, I think science is now it's catching up to what ancient mystics knew and the experiences we were having. So I just take, for example, past life regression. And we look at one of the most world-renowned past life regressionist, Dr. Brian Weiss. He was a psychologist that in his own practice, he was an atheist. You know, he talks about being an atheist, not believing about a spiritual realm. And in his practice, when he would take people into these deep hypnotic trance state of mind, they would go into a past life regression. And he didn't understand it initially, but he kept delving into it. He was very open to it. And he started seeing, wow, there's something coming up about this past life, or these other names, or this other existence that they had, or they're connecting to a loved one that's in a different realm, and like, what's going on here? And the more he started studying it, the more evidence and proof of an afterlife started to unfold. And now he's one of the world's most, renowned researchers on past life regression. So he actually gave up his medical profession and his psychology profession to study past life regression. So I think we're seeing that in many aspects of this. I think it's not a woo-woo hokey-pokey thing that
which is
going on.
amazing.
But
Did I read? Oh, go ahead, Gina.
Don't you think that society has also caught up in accepting, the spiritual realm from a cultural perspective? I think, it's still a small evolution.
Yeah.
But I think there's more acceptance today than there was, let's say,
but I think the science part of it is key.
And I was just going to say, and I think from my perspective where I sit, I think because the science is finally catching up, there's that validation, there's that
absolutely,
right.
I can connect to this because it's scientifically proven out. Right.
Yeah,
that's true. And there's a lot of mystics in Catholicism. You think of Padre Pio, and Sister Faustina. These were like major people that had visions and visits, and the Catholic Church recognized it. So that's
true.
really cool.
That's true.
And that brings us to a pathway of light.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, 100%. I say the Holy Spirit, if we're looking at this from the Catholic aspect, is present in all of us. And that divine presence within us will lead us to our highest and best possibility in this physical existence. And that's the thing. We have irrefutable evidence now, all around, that shows us that there is something way beyond this physical body.
Yes.
Yes. And that's what it is. I think science needed time to catch up. A lot of people are still processing it. But if we look at the aspects of ancient Catholicism, even I would say prior to the church being the church, if we look at, like, if we're going to take, for example, Jesus, he was mystical. He was supernatural. The Old Testament and the New Testament, they are supernatural books with undeniable evidence in there of mystical experiences that people had that showed them you are divinely connected to something that's beyond this human realm, without a shadow of a doubt. And some people wanted to say, what is that parable that we're speaking about? Or what, that was just a story. That was an interpretation. No, these were people's experiences that they truly had, and they were being documented in the best way they knew how at that point in time.
Correct.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I think it is more accepted today, but there's still a lot of skepticism.
There is.
However, a classic example is the Holy Trinity. How mystic is that?
Right.
Yeah.
So true.
Absolutely.
Right? It's beautiful.
Absolutely. But we were talking about earlier, Michael and I, before we signed on, how things were looked at differently back in the day and today. Like years ago, mystics and psychics were looked at as demonic because maybe that's what they were practicing.
Yes.
And today it's more we know it's of light and of God. So I think that's also changing because the way people are practicing their gifts, they're not using it in the ways that
they, but also I think that I'll refer to it as nomenclature. Decades past, it was referred to as witchcraft. There was no spiritual.
That's right. That's exactly what you're saying.
And today it's spiritual. It's within. It's divine. It's channeling. Very different. It's a fundamental shift from my perspective.
Yes.
And you could recognize it when it's not pure. You know what I mean?
Oh,
You feel it.
yes.
You
Yeah, you
feel
feel
it when
it.
it's not
Yeah.
good.
Yep.
If
That's
you
the
will.
difference.
Yeah, and there is light and dark to all aspects of humanity and even spirituality. You know, there are people that are going to try to conjure or try to pull in demonic energy or try to do this from a negative aspect, try to create a spell to conjure or control or harness. But what I can tell you is that's a low vibrating thing. You know, when we're talking energy, as a medium, what I'm trying to do is raise and lift the vibration. It's a very high energy, and the divine energy of heaven is such a high frequency. The way I like to explain it is evil can't reside in that high frequency. Yeah. Evil demonic energy is a low vibrating energy. It would be like saying evil resides in heaven. It does not. It's a divine high vibrating frequency. And depending on how we live our life, how we are carrying ourselves, if we're trying to live in that higher vibrational frequency, we're going to repel that dark demonic energy. We're going to repel that evil. We're going to pull ourselves up into that light. You know, so it's a process. And I like to think that how I'm doing this, I'm working with the divine good. I'm working with the light. You know, maybe there are other aspects. And I'm not naive to say everything is love and light. I do believe we have to look at, you know, the light and the dark. And we do have to look at, you know, those aspects of things to understand them, to make sure we're not pulled into them. And to, you know, we have to look at all aspects of this so we're not ignorant to it.
Oh, yeah.
And then we can discern it. But I can tell you, it's been a long process of understanding the energy, the vibration, the frequency around it, understanding, you know, the negative dark energies and that higher vibrating light energy, and doing what I need to do to protect myself from that, and to put myself in a state of love, a state of joy, you know, a state of happiness and well-being. So when we talk about practitioners that maybe they're not, you know, maybe they're full of addiction and problems and issues, and there's a lot of pain and suffering and angst around them. Well, I would say that person has a lot of their own dark night of the soul to go through or to work through before they should be working with others, you know? And so there's a process. And I think, you know, we hear the term now, like there's a medium explosion. I feel like you can turn on any social media page and there's someone that's a medium or a psychic or a channeler, or, and good and bad, you know, we're more open to that, and we're making it more acceptable.
Right.
But in that, there's going to be, like anything else, people doing it at a very good, honorable level. And there's going to be people doing it because they want to try to build a social media following, or they want to get famous, or they're doing it from a standpoint of ego. So we have to look at all aspects of it so we can discern what resonates with us.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Very true. Yeah. And we talk about that, the power of social media, good and bad, all the time. And that's included in that. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's important to recognize the difference.
Oh, yeah.
Between good and bad, obviously.
Definitely.
Light and dark.
Yeah. So we talk so much about how you validate and how you bring evidence to stuff, but I want to get into a little bit more of a personal side of you, if you don't mind.
Sure.
So in 2024, you released your spiritual musical album, which is amazing, by the way, called The Divine Journey of the Mystical Soul. Did I get it?
Divine Journey of a Mystic Soul. Yes, thank you.
So I want to ask you, if you don't mind, what was going on in your life at that time for that beautiful, you know, thing to be birthed into the world? Because I listened to it and I was like, I was transcended. I told you, it was just amazing.
It's so relaxing.
Yeah. It was.
Oh, thank you. So I was trying to formulate something I was doing in my own meditations to try to align me with being able to bring through pure evidence and really align my soul with the highest vibrational energy. And kind of through that path, I started researching binaural beats, binaural tones, and hemisync. And what they do is the binaural tones, the binaural beats, put your body into almost a trance-like state. So someone that's dealing with anxiety, or, you know, we're very left brain and can't, you know, we're caught up in that analytical mind, and it's pulling us out of that creative state. The binaural beats will put us into a trance. And then hemisync aligns the left and right hemisphere of the brain into this cohesive, unifying, I guess, combined energetic source of channel. And what happens is, so in scientific research, 9 hertz is where they say the medium starts connecting and pulling into spirit. Well, hemisync will put your mind into that natural state. If you have a hard time meditating, or your mind's always going, and we all have the to-do lists, and what I tell people is it's going to be really hard for you to sit on a log in the woods, like a Buddhist monk, and get into that Zen state, especially if you're caught up with work, family, things going on. But if you can listen to something and it can tune your body and your mind into that state, you're going to have profound effects.
Yeah.
So I started creating it for myself and for other healers, other psychics, other mediums, and clients of mine that were having a hard time meditating. Mike, I can't meditate. Can you give me some tips or some
you hear that very often.
And, breath work is very good, and we can be very conscious of breath work. That'll help kind of pull us out. But there was nothing that could almost immediately get you into that trance state and allow you to start transcending the rational mind. Well, on my own experience, the binaural beats and the hemisync were doing that. So I had to find a way to incorporate it into my own music. And, I'm a musician for a good period of my life. I'm just consumed by the love of sound. Instruments, all different types of music. And I wanted to create something that I could kind of give back and help others get into that meditative state. And that's what it was. So, and actually, can I do a little plug here?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Mystic soul. Yeah, it was a process of me letting go and going into a trance state and allowing this to happen.
Yeah.
And what I did was, when I would go into the trance through binaural tones and hemisync, I would allow that process to be underlying in the music. And then I started building upon that. And I would come out of sessions of writing and I wouldn't even know what I wrote. I would have to go back and listen to it. And literally, that's how, when you become a divine channel and you go into a trance state, that's where the real magic starts happening. I would have to go back and listen. And I mean, there were
wow, that's good.
Parts that I don't know in my waking state. I could play some of those things I did when I was in trance.
Yeah. That's amazing.
I was divinely guided, and there were some of my own spirit guides I know came in and helped, and it was a beautiful thing that unfolded. And I hope people get as much joy from listening to it, and as much peace, and
I did.
As you all did.
Yeah.
Do you incorporate any of these in any of your sessions with people?
I have not yet. No. I'm so into my mediumship sessions, but what I do a lot of, like, if I'm doing an event or I'm doing some type of workshop, if people are having a hard time with that, I'll turn them onto the music, or I'll give them a copy of the CD. But prior to a session, I always utilize it. And before, like a gallery, I'll play it. So the whole audience will hear it, and it'll start to recalibrate their mind.
Okay. Yeah.
But it's not something that I formally have really worked with to the extent that I probably should.
Yeah. I'm curious to hear what Gina and John felt from, because then I'll tell you my experience, because it was totally amazing. And I didn't even know the backstory before I was telling him earlier.
Yeah.
What'd you say, John? I'm sorry.
I was instantly relaxed when I started listening to it. And it did take me to another place. It almost reminded me of when I used to go to this mystical place where I would lie on a hot lava bed. No, really.
No.
And I would lie on that bed, and you had headphones on. And I did it. The last time I did it was over a year ago. And I felt like that relaxation. And I'm a person that's really hard to relax. So when I started listening, I really felt like I was transcending into relaxation, if you will.
Yeah.
All right. So it worked.
It was beautiful.
Same for you, Gina?
It was the same experience. And, coming off a hectic day of work, Michael, you're pulled in 100 different directions. So it takes me a while to really, really quiet my mind. And so I put that on, and I, I immediately felt, the shift to be able to connect because to meditate on my own, I can't do it anymore. I just can't. I have too much noise in my head. Yeah. And this really just brought me there. And I will go as far as to say it was on a cellular level. It was so deep.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate that feedback.
What I was telling Michael, when I listened to one of the songs, I closed my eyes and I was just taken, like John said, somewhere else. But I saw each one of my loved ones that had passed on walk in front of me. Beautiful. Like that song brought them in. And it was so profound for me. That's why I asked you that question, if you use it in sessions, because I felt like it let me feel their presence without someone telling me they're with me. I felt them with me. It was just so amazing. So I'm going to download your album off Spotify, maybe using some of my sessions with clients for Reiki.
Awesome. Yeah, that would be fabulous.
Yeah, absolutely.
I actually listened to it on Pandora.
Well, you're on how many platforms is that?
Spotify, Pandora.
Yeah, it's on most.
Yeah. I listened on Spotify today. It was amazing. Yeah. So you're also a podcaster. So let's get to that.
I am
Mary Amy have a great podcast, Two Psychics, that we all watch.
Oh, yes, thank you.
Honored to be a guest on it one time, and I'll be on again.
You will.
So, yeah. Talk a little bit about that. Like, how did you and Mary Amy connect? And I asked her this question, and her answer was cute, but I want to know what your answer is. How do you feel like your different gifts that you have complement each other and work together on the show? Because you are very different.
Yeah, it's interesting how we met. So I had talked earlier about traveling into the city, traveling into Manhattan, doing different wellness events, different, psychic fairs. And the funny thing was, at one of the events, Mary Amy was also a practitioner. I think at that point she was reading cards and doing a lot of psychic intuitive readings. And in between clients, she comes over, she realized, she heard I was a medium, and she tells me she's having these crazy experiences, and she feels like when she's tuning into her psychic energy, loved ones are dropping in, or she's picking up on spirit, and spirit's trying to visit her, and it's very overwhelming. And she was just asking me, how do you deal with it?
Yeah.
And I just remember telling her, you are in control. Everyone, that's what everyone needs to understand. We are in control of this. And
absolutely
not, it's going to be a process of practicing and learning it before you have it as a volume knob that, some days it's on 10 and some days you bring it down to 1. Yeah. But you are absolutely in control of it. And I started talking to her about how to harness that. And I remember saying to her, think of it in this way, if they're coming to you and you're not sure who they are, first off, ask them, name, rank, serial number. Who are they? Where are they from? What's going on? But tell them they need to make an appointment, or they need to come to you when you say it's okay for them.
Yeah, people don't realize they can do that. Exactly.
Yeah. And they will. And the funny thing is, it's a process of learning our energy and learning how to protect our energy. And I think it's part of the learning and growing path that we start tuning into our own body's energy, and we learn and we grow, and then we figure out how to harness it, and then we figure out how to utilize it and grow it, and and that's kind of the basis of it. So yeah, it was funny, and she was cool, and what was funny, like her, I remember her coming in, and she had a whole entourage. It was like 10 people around her loading her table up, and all I could think is, wow, this is kind of crazy. What's going on there? And there's this whole entourage. And I remember one of the other readers telling me, well, she's a Hollywood actress and does energy healing and all this stuff. And we're all kind of in this trying to find our way. And we started just talking, hit it off, and she is very interesting because she's very into a lot of the conspiracy theories and the cryptids and the alien theories, and it's stuff that I'm very into, but it's not stuff that I openly talked about.
Right.
I do believe there were many ancient civilizations. I don't believe the reality that we're living in is what it truly is. You know, I do believe we are part of like a matrix. I do believe there were many ancient cultures that have been covered up. You know, I do believe there was a Tartaria. I do believe there was an Atlantean world. I do believe there's a lot of ancient history that's been covered up and hidden from us. So it was interesting where she's fully out and she's diving down all these rabbit holes.
Exactly.
And she had me on her own show a couple times. She found my mediumship very intriguing. And I remember giving her a reading, and really, really evidential stuff came through. And I remember her asking me, you know, how could you possibly know that? And I was like, well, it's a process, and we could all learn that. It's just putting in the time, like anything else. You know, it's practice. It's like learning an instrument. It's like learning to, you know, ride a bike. You're you know, maybe you need training wheels initially, but eventually you can, you know, be mountain biking through the hills in rough terrain. You know, it's a process like anything else. We just have to allow ourselves the grace and the time to study and train and allow it to unfold. And we all have our own gifts. I like comparing energy healers, psychics, mediums to like musicians. You know, some are going to have a style of jazz, some are going to be classical, some are going to be rock. You know, we're all going to have our own flavor and our own interpretation. And there's room for all of it. You know, a big thing that I see is, you know, sometimes people come into this and it's almost like a competition. Like, what can I do, or where am I positioned? And I don't think that's what it's about at all. I think it's about us each growing and learning our own gift, whatever that is to us, and sharing that gift. And I think together we can blend different modalities and different techniques, and we can all learn and grow from each other.
Absolutely.
And that's what this is about. Like, this is something that we're in the school of life, and it's a continual learning and growing experience.
Oh yeah.
I'm always learning and growing about my mediumship. You know, it's a process. And I think that's what people need to understand. But yeah, she had some funny things to say, and we just connected. You know, her energy resonated with mine, and it was 23, I think, or so, that she'd reached out and had this great idea of a podcast and needed a co-host, and thought I would be a good fit. And, you know, we tried it out, and
it's history.
Yeah. You know, 2 years later, I think we're going to be hitting episode 100 pretty soon.
Oh, congratulations.
Congratulations.
We're doing a really big anniversary episode. And
that's great.
It's fun things coming from it. And it's taken me down some crazy, you know, rabbit hole conspiracy theories that I might not have gone down otherwise.
You've had some crazy guests too.
Yeah, but it's always interesting. And that's why I say we have to be open to all these aspects. And I think you can learn something from everyone's story, and you know, everyone's got a story to share, and there's some really interesting ones on the Two Psychics podcast. And I'll give a shameless plug on April 2nd, Thursday, April 2nd. We are doing a big event at the Pelham Manor Club, and it's a big 300-seat theater. We're doing the Mysteries of Psychic Abilities and Mediumship Gallery. So anyone that's in the New York area or wants to travel in, definitely come check out what we do live. I'll be doing a full-out mediumship gallery as part of that, and showing people, you know, psychic abilities, mediumship, and this energy thing that we talk about is something that we can all tune into and we can all learn from.
Absolutely.
And Michael, where can people find you to follow you on the podcast, and how can they get in touch with you for any readings?
Yeah, so if you're looking in regard to the podcast, so Two Psychics podcast is on most streaming platforms. We're on YouTube, Spreaker, we're on
Rumble,
pretty much, wherever podcasts are, we are there. We have a Facebook page, Two Psychics Podcast on Facebook. I have my Eye of the Spirits with Michael Edley Facebook page. There, you can also reach out to me, eyeofthespirits.com. That's my website. That's where, if you want a private reading, a group reading, want to bring me in for an event, that's where you can contact me and we could set something up. But it's
absolutely,
it's all there. Yeah.
Excellent.
Well, that's amazing. And I know you just told us about the event coming up. Is there any new projects we can look forward to in the future that you're working on? Yeah.
So this year in 26, I'm involved in quite a few like holistic and wellness events. I'm going to be doing several mediumship galleries throughout the year. So I will April, I don't have all the dates in front of me, but late April, I'll be doing another big wellness festival in, I believe it's Wayne, New Jersey. I'll be doing some stuff coming up. See, after, I think we'll probably be airing this episode after I have some events that are coming up soon, but just follow any of my social media.
Yeah, I was going to say all on your social media to be listed.
Yeah, everything will be on my Eye of the Spirits with Michael Edley Facebook page. And you can always sign up for my email list, and I will keep you in the know of whatever is going on. And you know, I'm waiting for the gracespiration. I'm waiting for the Life Unfiltered event to go on. You know, I'll come up there and do an event with you guys.
Absolutely.
Oh, love that.
Stay tuned. Stay tuned.
That'd be
Stay
awesome.
Tuned. Michael, thank you for all the beautiful knowledge that you shared with us tonight, all the experiences of your lifelong journey, and your beautiful spiritual album that I cannot say enough about. It just is amazing. And we'll be promoting that for you as well. I will list all that, you know, in the description of the show, because I believe in it. After I listen to it, I believe in it. So I'm hoping that we see part 2 coming out soon. Maybe next year you'll hit us with another.
That would be awesome.
Yeah, hopefully.
So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Nice meeting
Really
you.
appreciate your time.
So before we say goodnight, I'd like to remind ourselves as well as our audience, before we speak out in the world, let's remember, is it true? Is it necessary? Is it kind? Think about it. Good night. Until next time.
Good night.
Good night.